Hello and welcome. Does anyone else feel like the country has gotten a little dystopian? First off, my condolences to the Texas National Guard. I know I wasn't too happy when I had to go to Illinois. That was for boot camp, though. It's interesting watching the U.S. mobilize against itself. It's almost as though we have someone trying to incite a civil war of some kind. And the longer we don't engage in civil war, the redder Stephen Miller's face becomes. It's the most wild thing how that guy can just walk around looking like a beet all day long and not have like a brain hemorrhage or something occur that just his like, you ever see Mayfair Witches where that little like aneurysm pops or whatever? And I don't know. He gets really worked up over like really wanting to be the worst person in the world. Like he's in a direct competition with Trump. And I don't know why, because the policies they're running aren't even let's do good for the American people. It's let's make life worse for people we don't like. And that's a strange foundation for people who claim to follow like religious beliefs. I think it's all a load of hoopla because honestly, you want to talk about like false prophets and stuff. Let's take a look at, the big T. We all know little T, Jesus, but like fucking now we got the guy in the White House just making a mockery of like all that it means. Back in the Bible days, Jesus would have been pissed, I'm pretty sure. I don't even know if Jesus was like a good guy or if he was just like someone who came in and was like a little bit autistic. That's what my working theory is. I think Jesus might have been autistic, and then when he went to study like the Egyptian cultures and came back to like bring the love and peace and wisdom that a multi-deistic pantheon can bring to a society, because it makes room for diversity and acknowledges that through our differences we come together and have strength and unity. But like then all of a sudden there's one God to rule them all. And that one God has three component parts that are all equally in and of themselves God and distinct from one another, and at the same time one and the same in the Holy Trinity, because you got the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and they can't be subservient to one another because that if that's how their interactions work, is that one is subservient to the other, then the entire religion is just about controlling people. And they wouldn't do that, right? What did God mean in the First Amendment when he said don't have other gods before him? Was that like, because the second one was about making false idols or graven images unto oneself or whatever, they spoke a different English back then. I don't use terms like that normally. But like, anyway, the point I was trying to make is, are we all just waiting around for like that guy to disappear, or like for nature to take its course? I'm sorry, we got to keep it careful because, the Charlie Kirk assassination really quieted the conversation about like how bad of a person Trump is. And I think one thing we should recognize is Trump is still equally as bad, clamoring for a third term. Could you imagine, to celebrate 250 years, America puts forth a king? That's why I say, what are we just waiting for him to like pass on to the next presidency before we all like decide to be good people again? And I'm not saying we aren't good people, but like we're allowing an administration to start writing rules that are then used to justify actions. And that's where it's one of those things of, I feel like a lot of us know what good is. Like, I'm a trans woman, and at the same time, it's not as though my existence is intended to offend people. Uh, as a matter of fact, I would venture as far as to argue it's not even that difficult to make space or accommodations for me, even with my neurodivergences. But then you have someone who's in the presidency fomenting that trans people are the problem. Now consider this. I served in the military for 5 years. Within that 5 years, in the class or the rate of ET, I made it up through ET3, 2, and then I was in ET1 frocked right before I got like removed from the military. And like, is that to say that I was then bad at my job? Because it's hard to measure that progression against like the justification that, oh, I'm the, problem drinker that doesn't have any disciplinary record. Like, that's really strange. And it all kind of works in my favor, but at the same time, I'm upset that like my service is now correlated with a country that chooses to follow a person as radically incorrect as Donald Trump, because it's disgusting. The guy pardoned insurrectionists and then oh, well, we ought to use the Insurrection Act. Oh, hey, yeah, and maybe we should have dealt with insurrection the way it's handled in the Constitution, which is not very kind. Believe it or not, the document, not a great document. But people follow that guy. People will instantly write me off. Even after I get my computer science stuff figured out and finish school, people will look at me and go, oh, that's a trans person. We gotta avoid her. Well, they might even misgender me, fuck them. But it's ridiculous that that's the world I have to live in. And at the same time, in my economic privilege, I've managed to find security in where I'm currently at, to the point where I feel almost comfortable. And at the same time, I'm like, geez, we really gotta just think about who we even say is in a figurehead position next time, because this time around, that we know what we're trying to avoid. So next time we get the opportunity to write rules, let's make sure we cover our bases against this happening again. Or they'll send the secret police to come and kidnap me in the night, and then we'll go, hey, wait, Chloe's actually a productive member of society. She's a veteran, she pays her bills, she feeds into the local economy by buying her Monster and Fast Break every morning. You know that's become a $7 breakfast? $7. Can you believe it? I mean, don't even get me started. It's oh, we're gonna lower prices. All right, bud, why are eggs still a dozen dollars? What's going on? Because if we were living and the economy was as it was back in the Obama keep the change era, maybe cumulatively our interest wouldn't be absolutely wrecked, but we had 4 years of monstrous economic policies followed by complacency during the onset of a genocide, and now an absolute ignorance of how to internationally relate with other countries, because Donald Trump thinks everything is a just show, and everyone around him kind of plays into it. And it's honestly, as someone who's now studying theater and acting, it's really funny to see someone like Donald Trump who has one shtick that he does, and then just keep going with it, and everyone just kind of follows along all the way up until January 6th. And again, for me, that was the brain-breaking point of well, okay, I sold out my personal interests to join the military, and now the dude isn't even willing to pass over the presidency. Honestly, that's kind of, I don't know. How small of a person do you have to be to lose an election take 4 years out of the presidency, deny that you lost the election, and then have the audacity to say you'll stay in for a third term. How many years do you want the presidency, Trump? How many years do you want to lead this country? Because all you're doing is ruining it. Every piece of our country has become markedly worse since Trump has taken over, and the whole spewing of hate and rhetoric that just depersonalizes the attacks. That's what leads to people like Groypers taking out your own. And they try to say that the left does it when we say that the people who are building concentration camps are like the people who were building concentration camps about 80 years ago. But we have a footing to stand on. We aren't the side that's actively making life worse for people, because that's where the money's going with them. It's not going to make jobs for people who need jobs, even if they're federal jobs with cush benefits or whatever. Good on them, you know? I wish I could have an office job where I got to sit and do nothing all day. It would be nice, but the world demands we work, and at the same time, the people who don't want those beneficial jobs that are less taxing on people, the people who don't want to squeeze individuals for every ounce of productivity, those are the ones that are in control right now, and they have all the money, and they have the power to control these elections. And are we all just gonna sit around and wait until they declare that they own America? Because honestly, I mean, every day, all I can do is wake up, go to work, go to school, and play Dark Souls. I have no time for this. If they're gonna come and try and seize my property or take my job, I think that's pretty offensive. Don't come and take my job. I worked hard for that. And why do they even want to take it? Because a difference of beliefs? Because at my core, I was born into a body that doesn't physically represent who I am internally. And as a miracle of human science, we've gotten to a point where I can supplement my hormonal levels to a point where I can develop into the physical form I'd like to achieve. And at the same time, their issue is that they have to use she and her instead of masculine pronouns. It's kind of ridiculous. Because again, how hard is it to just, I don't know, use my name? What's the issue? I remember when I was playing poker, someone at the table had said, oh yeah, I'm gonna have trouble remembering your new name, so sorry if I call you the old one. I was like, well, I got trouble remembering the new one. How about you just call me Nolan? Because we're in the military, so hey, don't even worry about it. But people come in and just, oh, you know you're a dude, right? What does that mean? What is the point of that being said? And I get it, they want to argue or whatever because they see oh, we got to avenge our hero and become America's next top keyboard warrior. But I don't have time for that. I'm struggling because so much is going on that we have George Floyd Day coming up in a few days, and I don't even know if I'll be able to celebrate my victory over Cephas Scaleless before I have to make a video talking about I don't know, the systemic harms our society continues to commit against the long-term oppressed populations of this stolen land from indigenous populations. What are we even doing here? Why do we keep electing the worst of all possible people? I made a joke about Stephen Miller looking like Lex Luthor the other day, and no one got it because every version of Lex Luthor nowadays isn't the bald, slender, white guy. I guess I got canceled by the woke. Or did I get canceled by Trump? You know, I can't keep track of any of this anymore. But I think Stephen Miller looks like Lex Luthor. I don't think that, I don't know, unelected bureaucrats ought to be dictating how people identify. I mean, I don't know. I have yet to meet someone on the streets that knows me better than I know myself. You know, as a matter of fact, I have yet to meet anyone. Well, Palantir knows. Well, he knows everything, so he doesn't count. Anyway, we're not going to talk about my deific cat. I just want to say thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your support. I've worked hard to get to where I am, and again, all I do is just like try to endure. But the world insists on shaking around, and now everything seems to be settling down, and I don't think I can just let it go in terms of like, they're actively still doing the bad stuff. Like, that's where our taxpayer dollars are going. Like, all those cuts they made on jobs, which, by the way, I just watched a video, I'll probably link it in the description, for AI jobs that are reported in like headline bullets are oftentimes actually H-1B visa holders, because companies are trying to move towards a more like industrialized labor process, which means people get less rights, which I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I think it's slimy, and honestly, everyone who has as much money as they do ought to be spending it as fast as they can, because if true justice were to occur, they're not going to keep that money. Because right now we're fighting for crumbs, and they got a vacuum cleaner sucking it all up. So, thank you all for your support, and I love you so much. Have a good one. Bye.